You just left your baby with a stranger for 10 minutes. Maybe a babysitter. Maybe a daycare worker you met twice. You didn't think about it too hard. But if you had done that 100,000 years ago, it might have been the single smartest decision you ever made. Because the real answer to how ancient humans kept their kids alive is far stranger than the parents watched them closely. The truth is, your ancestors survived by doing something almost no other primate on Earth does. They gave their babies away. On purpose. Constantly. Think about that for a second. A newborn human is, by animal standards, a disaster. It can't walk. It can't cling to fur because there isn't any. It can't regulate its own temperature. It can't even lift its own head. A baby gorilla can grip its mother's chest within hours of birth. A human baby can't do that for months. So why would evolution design the most helpless infant on the planet, in an environment full of predators, disease, and starvation? That question sat unanswered for a long time. And the answer changes everything about what a family actually was. Start with the numbers because the numbers are brutal. Anthropologists Michael Gervin and Hillard Kaplan studied dozens of hunter-gatherer and forager populations around the world, from the Amazon to the Kalahari. Their data showed something sobering. Historically, roughly half of all children born into these societies did not survive to adulthood. Half. Not because parents were careless. Not because they didn't love their children. The world itself was simply that dangerous. Infection falls. Animal attacks. Food shortages that hit the smallest bodies first. If survival depended only on two parents doing everything alone, the species should have collapsed generations before agriculture, before writing, before anything we'd recognize as civilization. But it didn't collapse. And the reason is a concept that reshaped how scientists think about the human family. It's called cooperative breeding. The anthropologist Sarah Blaffer, HRDY, spent decades studying primate mothers, and she noticed something odd about humans compared to our closest relatives. Chimpanzee mothers are possessive. They rarely let anyone else touch their infants, sometimes for years. Human mothers do the opposite. Across nearly every documented hunter-gatherer society, babies are held, fed, carried, and looked after by people who are not their biological parents. Grandmothers, aunts. Older siblings. Unrelated adults in the same camp. HRDY called these people alloparents. And she argued that without them, the human species as we know it would not exist. Picture a Pleistocene campsite. It's not one mother watching one baby in isolation. It's a shifting web of hands. A grandmother nursing a fussing toddler back to calm, while the mother forages 3 hours away. An older cousin carrying an infant on her hip while she plays. A childless woman in the group who has cared for a dozen babies that were never biologically hers. This wasn't sentimental. It was structural. It was the actual engineering behind human survival. Your ancestors didn't outcompete predators with strength. They outcompeted extinction with a village. Here's where it gets stranger. Why would a grandmother, whose own reproductive years were long over, spend her remaining energy helping raise someone else's child? From a cold evolutionary standpoint, shouldn't she be resting? The anthropologist Kristen Hawkes proposed an answer that's now known as the grandmother hypothesis. She studied the Hadza, a foraging population in Tanzania, and found that older women were often the most productive food gatherers in the entire camp. They dug tubers. They provisioned grandchildren. And by doing so, they freed up the mother to have another child sooner, without risking the survival of the one she already had. Hawkes argued this single behavior might explain why human females are one of the only species on Earth to live for decades after menopause. Grandmothers weren't a side effect of long human lifespans. They may be the reason humans live long at all. Now here's the part that should genuinely unsettle you. This means the nuclear family, the idea of one mother, one father, and their children alone, self-sufficient, closed off from the group, is not the ancient default. It's closer to a modern invention. For most of human history, a baby without a wide support network wasn't unusual. It was a death sentence. Isolation didn't just feel hard. It was statistically dangerous. Your body still knows this. The exhaustion new parents describe when they're doing it alone isn't weakness. It's a mismatch. It's a brain and body built for a support system that, for many people today, simply isn't there anymore. There's a physical fossil record of this too, and it's easy to miss. Archaeologists have found skeletal remains of children with severe disabilities, illnesses, or injuries that would have made them completely unable to contribute to the group for years, sometimes their entire lives. And yet the bones show healing, survival. Some of these individuals lived into adulthood despite conditions that should have killed them in infancy without care. That care had to come from somewhere. Someone fed them when they couldn't feed themselves. Someone kept them warm through winters they couldn't have survived alone. This wasn't an accident of kindness. It was, in a very real sense, the operating system of early human society. So how did ancient humans actually keep their kids alive day to day? Not with cribs or car seats or babe-approved corners. With bodies. Babies were carried almost constantly, often in slings made of hide or woven fiber, pressed against the warmth and heartbeat of whoever was working, walking, or resting nearby. Constant physical contact regulated a baby's temperature and breathing, functions a newborn couldn't fully manage alone. Older children, sometimes only 5 or 6 years old themselves, were given real responsibility watching toddlers, a level of trust that would look shocking by modern standards, but that emerged directly from necessity. Food was shared, not hoarded, because a hungry group meant a hungry infant, and a hungry infant meant the group's future was already shrinking. And when you strip away every modern invention, what remains is almost embarrassingly simple. Ancient humans kept their kids alive with attention. Not surveillance. Not anxious hovering. Distributed, layered, redundant attention, spread across so many caring adults that no single failure could doom a child. If one caregiver was sick, another stepped in. If a mother died in childbirth, and this happened often, other women in the group would nurse her infant, sometimes literally, sometimes through shared food and care. The child's survival was never resting on one person's shoulders. It never could be. The margins were too thin for that. Which brings you back to today, and to that 10-minute moment with the babysitter or the daycare drop-off, or the grandparent who insists on taking the baby for the weekend. You might feel a flicker of guilt in those moments, as if handing your child to someone else is a compromise, a lesser version of real parenting. But your ancestors would find that guilt almost incomprehensible. To them, a child raised by many hands wasn't a child being underparented. It was a child being correctly parented, the way the species had done it for nearly its entire existence. The isolated, single caregiver model many people struggle under today isn't the ancient standard you're falling short of. It's the historical anomaly your biology never adjusted to. Every time a friend brings over a meal after a birth, every time a grandparent shows up unannounced to hold a crying baby so you can sleep, every time a neighbor watches your kid for an afternoon without being asked twice, you are participating in the oldest surviving human technology there is. Not fire. Not the wheels. The village. It kept half a species alive when the odds said it shouldn't have. And somewhere in your nervous system, in the specific relief you feel when someone else finally takes the baby for a while, that ancient arithmetic is still running, quietly reminding you that you were never supposed to do this alone.